All right, let's do this. No more waiting around. Lots of people can watch the recording, but let's get into it. Thanks for joining us for our Q2 webinar. We're going to cover a bunch of stuff. Exciting section of the year coming up from April to June here. So excited to share with you what we got over the next bit and some of the areas of focus in terms of training and events we got from both the training, strength and nutrition, and recovery side of things. So let's do it. First off, big shout out to our sponsors. They definitely help make the club go around. So we got Adam Bendig and Brandon Haskins, both members of the club in the real estate sort of industry there. Bo, who's with Victoria Street Market. We get awesome discounts through Runner's Choice and Ziggy's. If you're considering buying a car, we got Russ, who owns a number of dealerships in the KW area through Forbes. He's an awesome guy, so reach out to him if you are in the market for one. And then Chris Dinesh from Valley Blade. So all of our main sponsors are also members of the club. So a great way to support fellow members in their businesses as well. Let's jump into it. So we have an awesome Q2. I was just looking on Training Peaks, getting so pumped up the other day that we have so many awesome races coming up. So I think like probably 15 or 20 of my athletes had a trophy, meaning a race coming up in the next couple weeks. So love to see that. So all that hard work gets put to the test in the next bit. Lots to learn from races. So in terms of triathlon, some of the big ones we got coming up in this block, we got 70.3 Chattanooga, Victoria, and Tremblant, and then a couple good local races. I didn't add it there, but Milton is in there as well. And then there's also Guelph Lake one and Welland, which is the Rose City Triathlon. So a couple great races if you're looking to, especially those local ones usually have a bunch of different distances. So great for a tune-up race if you have one in July or August. Never hurts to get a couple races under the belt. Just test your equipment, test your nutrition, see where your fitness is at. Just get kind of those pre-race breakfast down, those nerves out of the way, and just a great chance to practice lots of things. So when you get to your A races, that you are dialed in and know what you need to do. In terms of running, we got an exciting next 2 weeks coming up with three athletes running Boston Marathon next Monday, a bunch of people at Mississauga the weekend after that, as well as a couple in Kingston. I think Megan and Ryan are going to be out there. And then Toronto the week after that, and then Sulphur Springs in May as well. A few of the guys running the 50K there, and I think a few doing the relay. I know we have a few people also doing P2A, the bike race in Ancaster area. And then in terms of some of the club events we got, if you saw, I posted up. We're going to take advantage of the new Limitless Performance sauna space there and area they've opened up for the social side of things too. So we're going to order some food in, do some sauna, cold plunge, and have some time to hang out up there as well. We're going to do a Guelph Lake training day on June 7th, so probably a morning packed with some swim, bike, and run. Great, there'll be coach session, so great chance for some of the out of town athletes if they want to come pay a visit as well. It'll definitely be worth checking out one of those days. And then in terms of our educational webinars, we got a couple of those coming up as well in May and June as well. Cool. So moving on to the next section here in terms of group workouts. So a bunch of you know I'm moving out west as of May 1st coming up. So nothing changes in terms of our group workouts. We got awesome coaches who are going to step in and run most of those. So we're going to have Coach Jeff running the Thursday and Saturday bikes. We're going to go to outdoors as of April 28th is the plan. And then runs, our plan is to continue with the Wednesday track and Sunday runs. Jameson's going to lead those Wednesday track runs. We'll mix it up probably every 4 or 5 weeks and maybe go to a slightly different location. And then in terms of the Sunday runs, those will always bounce around to different locations and stuff as well. So we will bounce those around. Just keep an eye out as usual to the PDF there, and we'll change up the runs depending on what we have going on with those. In terms of swims, if you are newer here, we do have Jeff's Sunday session here in Elmira that he's planning to run year round, but also a lot of our athletes, I highly recommend joining like a local masters group if you have it, especially you remote athletes. Great chance to get some in-person like technical feedback from a coach, more predictability, just knowing that like in your lane you're going to be doing the same workout as people likely at the same level as you as well in terms of ability versus some of those public lane swims we know can get a little bit dicey out there and a little bit wild. So um, just the predictability of a masters group can go a long way in terms of having a good swim session because we know swim has enough barriers to get there unless you're a real lover of the swim like Malcolm over there. Let's jump to spring summer training. So lots of interesting stuff as you're kind of the weather's changing, your training's ramping up, you're moving from indoors to outdoors, lots of things to be doing over the next couple weeks to sort of get in tune with everything. So first of all, like especially going outdoors in terms of biking, either get if you're not good at it, getting a tune up from a local bike shop to make sure all your bolts are tight and not rusted, your brakes are working, tires, chain is clean and lubed, so you might have got sweat on it all through the winter. So giving it a good degrease and relube is super important. So you're not just squealing away with your chain when you first get outside there. So just be proactive with this stuff now. Make sure that your wetsuit's in good condition. It hasn't a mouse hasn't got into it over the winter or something like that. Your bike shoes are good in terms of like the cleats and stuff too. If you're using same cleats indoors as outdoors, I've seen people that use like a Peloton indoor and then go to do their first outdoor ride and can't clip in because they have the wrong cleat. So just making sure all this goes a long way to having a good ride experience when you first get out there. And then riding etiquette, just I'll post something coming up in the next couple weeks for anybody joining the group workouts to know the etiquette for those rides. Just making sure that if we're like big rule for anybody is just like making sure you're sticking to those rules of the road. It's not worth just because you're in an interval running a stop sign or running a stoplight. We all have families, jobs. We're doing this as fun on the side. So don't be a hero on this stuff. Safety first. Don't do something you're going to regret. And then just riding etiquette. That's where I'll post up a little PDF about if you're with group rides, just leaving a gap if you're in the aero bars and things like that, just to keep your fellow riders safe as well. In terms of clothing, like you notice this time of year, we're on a roller coaster ride of like warm and cold days. So just knowing that you're gonna have to modify your gear a fair amount. Um, you're gonna get some sunnier days coming up too, so getting in the habit of using that sunscreen and stuff as well. We're going into hotter conditions, so your hydration demands are gonna rise, especially on runs. It's easy for runs like at the track, you can drop a bottle there, but for some of our long runs, look at maybe a lot of times I'll put like a looped route in there, but being able to drop a bottle there goes a long way to staying up on hydration levels. Especially if you get in the back half of some of those long runs and you're not staying on that hydration, you're just making it so much harder on yourself if that like blood plasma is starting to drop. It's just gonna be a suffer fest at the end of those runs. Same with like pacing in the heat. So you're gonna notice like on some of those days when you start to get up like 14, 15 degrees or warmer, it's gonna take some time to adapt to the heat. So go trusting your effort on some of those first couple runs out there when it's a little bit warm is probably a good way to go versus trying to go A plus paces that you know you ran in cool conditions. Aero neck pain, you're going to notice on your first couple long rides that your neck is super sore, especially if you've had a certain Zwift setup that hasn't forced you to like stay down there and look up with your eyes, and also having your helmet and stuff as a little bit of an extra weight there and in aero position. So just be prepared for that. Not uncommon on the first couple rides. And then just as our training's ramping up, just making sure you know that life and work stress is going to play into how you're feeling as well. You're going to have probably more social things going on when it's nicer out, because everybody's going to want to go meet up at a patio or go on that extra hike. So just know, it's not to say don't do these things. You got to live your life, but like just know how this is going to play into your stress and try and pick your battles of like, oh, okay, I did a long run, like I got some good recovery and maybe I go socialize there versus if you're doing it the night before a long run, it can make things tougher. But just thinking about these things as much as possible and knowing that it's not segmented and these do play a factor in how you're going to feel and absorb your workouts. A lot of people will deal with allergies this time of year. And then the thing I put there, risky activities due to nice weather. Just if you say, for example, a runner and you're like, oh, it's a nice day and you just did a long run yesterday. You're like, I'm going for another long run today because it's so nice out. Like, again, I'm not saying don't go enjoy yourself. Just remember that there's give and take on everything and be smart where you pick your battles. Like, I want you to get out there and go enjoy the weather, but be smart. Maybe you go do an easy bike instead, something like that, that isn't going to maybe mess up kind of your harder and easier days within your week and put yourself at risk for injury or ruin the future next week that is going there. One of the things I posted on Instagram today from our last webinar is just a reminder that if you've been using a certain power source indoors and you're using a different one outdoors, it's probably good to maybe do a dual recording of that over the next bit to see if there's any differences between your power meters. My kicker, for example, reads higher than my Asioma pedals, so I always use my Asioma pedals indoor. So just knowing that if there's going to be differences there, so you don't have this like total shock of, oh my goodness, my fitness is like way worse than I thought it was, where it's just differences in the power meter. So you might, if you don't get a chance to test that, might need to go off of RPEs or perceived exertion a few of the first rides outside if you do have differences between them as you get calibrated. All right, so key areas of focus. So I've posted this on pretty much every webinar, so I don't need to talk too much about it, but I'll just leave it up there knowing that to optimize our performance, we got all these different buckets that we need to focus on. It's not just the training. We gotta nail our nutrition, get that recovery in, and realize that there is the stress of life, and anything you can do to kind of alleviate that stress or bring more positive vibes to it. If you enjoy it, you're more likely to show up to more workouts and be more consistent over time. So that's where having a community like LP is huge for we're all going through the same stuff. We can help you through those tough times, but also being able to hop in on some of those workouts and stuff where you can, or join the webinars. It's that community can go a long way in terms of making things enjoyable. So always just like to post that up there. If you're newer here, maybe take a quick screenshot of this and you can read through it a bit. But I'll jump into what in terms of training. So we talked, you noticed in our foundation season webinar, which was like Q4 of 2024, we were very much in that very polarized part. We were starting to build a lot of base, working on some of that anaerobic and VO2 top end. Over the last kind of quarter, you noticed we started to get a little bit more drifting a little bit more to that bottom pyramidal one. So you saw a lot more sweet spot, tempo threshold type of work there. And then that will sort of continue again in this block because we're going to get a little bit more race specific. So for most people, you're going to be doing most of your racing, especially if you're doing anything like a half marathon, 70.3 Ironman in that sort of zone 3 area, you're going to get very familiar with, but we'll still do a fair amount of that zone 4 work to kind of hopefully push that ceiling up to grow that zone 3 under it. But then again, if you're racing something like 5 or 10K, you're going to be touching a little more on that zone 4 or 5. That's why we do still always have a touch up in these areas. It's one of those things, if you don't use it, you lose it. So we still always have, you'll see like VO2 maintenance in there every like 2 to 3 weeks, just to make sure we don't totally lose our power on that zone, or little touch ups on things like strides or the odd sprint sort of workout on the bike, just to make sure we touch up on those zones. But always our foundation is going to be tons of this zone 1, 2 work. And then the zone 3 or 4 is where we're working on really that physiological stuff to continue to raise the ceiling. And we're wanting to build the biggest triangle possible with our fitness. So having a good top end and then but a huge base where you'll find a lot of people might come in, and a lot of the people coming from like hockey backgrounds or power sport backgrounds have these very like thin triangles. So they have these crazy top end ceilings and then these tiny bases. So then when they're running easy, they're like already jump into zone 3 or 4, which is why we give tons of that zone 1, 2, 3 to an athlete like that and touch up on zone 5 where somebody like myself who's done it for a bunch of years. I have tons of that zone 1 or 2. I need to touch up on that zone 5 a little bit more because my ceiling will sort of drop or is stagnating there. So I got to keep pushing that up if I want to grow that triangle. So just a little bit of that mentality of what the whole fitness looks like for an endurance athlete, that big triangle. So run season, we're kind of coming right into the peak run season coming up. So a lot of you are racing next week, but you might have a few of you who are racing the weeks after. So we're going to get in. Most of you have probably hit those peak mileage weeks and are starting to come down a little bit on that, unless you're racing maybe more like mid-May. So then we'll jump into the taper and then the race. So if you are looking for any guidance on some of that, if you're on performance plan, don't be afraid to send me a message in terms of I can give you some of the I'll have some notes in there for performance plan in terms of some of the taper workouts over the next couple weeks, depending on the race you're doing. But if you need any guidance on like mileage, things like that, let me know. But if you're on one-on-one, your coach is gonna sort of handle that for you, and you guys will go back and forth on some stuff there. And then just making sure we're really dialed in on what our race pace is. That's not something you're dialing in the final week. You've been working on that for many weeks, and it should be pretty predictable and know where you're at for race day. And hopefully you get like a little bit of a boost from the carb load, the caffeine, the race environment, the taper, that you got that extra level, but it shouldn't be wildly different from what you were doing in training. And then nutrition, should have practiced most of that by now in terms of knowing what you're doing for the race and what kind of quantities you can hold. And then some of the great things you can do in the final weeks when you're getting some time back in the taper is making sure that all your gear is good to go and that you know all the logistics for your course. So what are you doing for travel in and parking that weekend? When's your bib pickup? When does the race start? What does the course look like and where are the aid stations? So get out ahead of that. So if there's any things that you need to work on in final bits of training, according to that, then you have time to do that. And then one of the biggest common mistakes we see this is like trying to force extra fitness in the final 2 weeks and either burning yourself out or creating an injury. So again, your main fitness is going to be there about 2 weeks out from the race. So trying to force anything in the last 2 weeks is just, I always say you can't win the race in the last 2 weeks or get that much better, but you sure as heck can mess it up by doing too much or trying to push too hard in workouts or not getting enough recovery, things like that. So recovery and sharpness are key in those final 2 weeks. So if you're doing a marathon, it's usually 2 to 3 weeks of the taper. For a half, we're more tapering about like 10 days or so out from there. And then week of sort of for a 5 or 10K. In terms of triathlon, so we're starting to get into race season. A few people racing at Chattanooga in May, and then the bulk of people kind of jumping into that June, July, with a lot of Muskoka, Musselman, Tremblant, then Ottawa in August. So we'll start to hit peak volumes usually about 4 to 6 weeks out from your race, and then sort of level off in those final weeks where you're doing a few final race specific sessions around race intensity and nutrition. But yeah, you'll start to see more race specific workouts in there and then maintenance on some of those top end things like VO2 anaerobic stuff. So we don't lose it there and lose that top end speed. And then just like I was talking about for the running, we need to make sure that we know and we sim the demands of your course. So if you're on a super hilly course, knowing how to be able to use your gears on some hilly courses. So doing that for some of your long rides, and then also knowing what conditions you're going to be with. So if you're going down south for a race and it's going to be super hot and humid, doing a little bit of that heat prep. We have some tools in the Facebook group if you need any heat protocols, doing usually in the last 3 weeks. If you do 2 or 3 sessions a week for the final 3 weeks, you can really like expedite a lot of that, both mentally and physiologically for that. So Definitely things to do along the way. For a lot of you racing in July and August, we should start to get a fair amount of that exposure in June from your bike and runs. So you shouldn't have to do too much in the way of heat prep, hopefully. But then practicing with all your gear, and then just on that course demands part, like versus like I mentioned, if you have a hilly course, because a lot of the ones we have out here are hilly, but ones like Ottawa, or if you're doing a flatter course, knowing that you can spend tons of time in the aero bars and be comfy at race pace for that. So that's where the trainer can be great for that. Of really, if you can get comfy and aero on the trainer, chances are you're probably going to be pretty good outside in that aero position for comfort. Like you're going to deal with things like wind and road conditions and stuff like that. But in terms of actual position, being comfortable in the aero position and your legs and neck and stuff not firing, getting all fired up and getting tired in that, if you get good at the trainer on that, usually goes a long way. We always say nothing new on race day. Performance plan athletes, just make sure that you are using the volume guides to make sure that you have a plan all the way to the race. You know, you can always send me that on Facebook Messenger or email if you do have questions on that. I can always give you a review and see if I see any pain points, or if you run into any pain points along the way and can't keep up with it, or are feeling like you have more capacity, I can always give you guidance on that. So feel free to message me. We put these in last year, Coach Bromwin did, but just some of those keys to open water as we're starting to get into here for some of the triathletes. So you'll see in the next couple weeks, we'll start to add some more things around open water, from sighting to bilateral breathing. Not that you need to necessarily be bilateral breathing for your entire race, but knowing that you can in instances where, say, there's a, like, I'll use myself for example. I usually breathe almost exclusively on the right side, but I can breathe on the left. So when I'm coming up to like a buoy, for example, if it's a course that has a left turn, I know I'm going to do a couple strokes where I'm breathing on the left side and can do it efficiently and be able to make that left turn. And then I'll get back into my more comfortable right side breathing. So we'll do a couple of those, and then we do some of that 3-5-3-7 breathing, just to kind of knock you out of rhythm, because you'll have times in an open water race where you need to be able to stay calm, and you might have missed a breath because a wave hit you or a competitor hit you, and you missed a breath, and you have to go to 5 breaths for one or two of the strokes in a row. And knowing that you can do that calmly and be able to still keep nice and calm and get your breath back once you get back to that 3 or 2 breathing is a key in terms of racing. So that's why we put some of that in. We'll do that June 7th session, but if you can, make sure that you get at least a couple open water sessions in before your race. I would say like minimum 3 for most people. If you can get one in where you swim the race distance is always great too. But definitely don't be afraid to start. Like Guelph Lake has a nice shallow area where you could swim back and forth if you're worried about going to the deep water right away, and then build to that. But know the area, make sure you're not going in a thunderstorm, and try and go with a group or a buddy if you can. Um, so then just in terms of like your actual race, the more you can, we always say the more things you can control ahead of time leaves space for the inevitable things that are always gonna, there's always gonna be something that goes a little bit wrong in a race. So just knowing the course, making sure you get a good warm up. So if you can get in the water before a race, that's always great to make sure that your wetsuit's all good to go and hiked up so you have good shoulder mobility. And just if it's a cold swim too, that you get a little bit of that shock taken out if you get a little bit of water on the face too. So then when you first jump in, you're not totally shocked. Making sure you're testing out your wetsuit and goggles. So tint versus not. If it's a crazy sunny morning, just knowing you have tinted goggle options, or overcast. If you have a non-tinted pair, is great to have, especially if you wear a very tinted pair in an overcast morning, you won't be able to see a thing out there. But yeah, just being adaptable and knowing your strategy and stuff like that will set you up for open water. But the more you get in there, the more comfortable you're going to be, and try and do it with a friend and get a few times where you're bumping into one another, either in the pool or open water will go a long way. Just wanted to put this in. This is just sort of my case for especially for busy athletes. I know everybody has complex schedules and it might not work for everyone, but this is just sort of my yeah, just pushing people to, as much as possible, be able to get those key workouts in the AM where you can. There's just so many benefits to it, and everybody, not everybody, but majority of the most consistent athletes I see who can get their key workouts in and are consistent over time are knocking a lot of those workouts off in the AM. There's obviously going to be an exception for people like firefighters who have a bunch of days off here and there, but for regular people working like a lot of 9 to 5 jobs, if you can get those AM workouts in, you're just set up for the rest of the day. I don't know about you, but I feel way better the rest of the day knowing I knocked off maybe my toughest part of the day with some of the workouts I'm throwing at you these days. I'm thinking about the bike workout this morning where I was dying on camera for everyone on there. But also just less interruptions typically for people. Your mental and physical capacity and battery is just usually topped up from the night before versus if you had a busy day at work or if you have a pretty active job, you might have zapped that battery. So Garmin has that body battery, if you've ever seen that before. Who knows exactly how accurate it is, but it's definitely shows you how you do lose some gas throughout the day. Personally, especially for running, like my GI tolerance is way better in the morning, especially if you're an athlete that's not used to eating in the morning. And once you get over that and can start to eat in the morning and get your workouts in, I find I'm way less likely to have any GI stuff than I would for like an afternoon or an evening run. Most of our races are in the morning, and then also less sleep interruptions. So especially if you this all starts the night before. If you get to bed at the right time and get up early for your workout to be able to eat, hydrate, get the workout in, chances are, if you say don't have an evening workout or doing more of a supporting session in the evening, like an easy aerobic swim or easy bike or easy run if you had a harder bike in the morning, but key workouts in the mornings just help you at night. If you've ever done like some of those hard Zwift races at night, you just know you're like tough time to get to sleep after that. So this is just sort of yeah, as much as you can try and get those AM workouts in. I just see such a better chance of people getting those green training peaks weeks in there if they do that. So I'll jump it over to Adam for some strength and mobility and I think recovery as well.
All right, thanks, Coach. Excited for race season to start ramping up. We've had a big foundation season and base season for lots of focus on the strength work. And I think the main, message here is it's time to shift that focus a little bit to maintenance, going into your strength workouts and your mobility workouts. You're likely going to be fatigued. You're likely going to be a little beat up from some of those key run and bike workouts you're doing. So just going in with the mindset and expectations that kind of like some of those recovery training sessions you do, you just want to feel better by the time you finish than when you started. So using that mindset to really get the most out of the workouts, even if you're feeling a little banged up or a little beat up, sometimes just getting started, getting moving, getting the blood flowing will pay off huge. So same kind of volume in terms of number of sessions. You're going to see 2 strength sessions and 2 mobility sessions. We put them on Monday and Friday for strength and on Wednesday and Sunday for mobility. But quite frankly, you got to put them in your week where you feel like they fit best. The idea with the Monday workout is to kind of help you recover from your big training on the weekend. And then the Friday workout could possibly like tune you up and get you ready for a big weekend ahead. These workouts should not be making you sore. You shouldn't be pushing it that hard. It's more just maintenance. And then the mobility, kind of right in the middle of the week after that tough Wednesday run workout, if that's when most of our key run workouts are, and then Sunday after that long run. So the mobility should make sense around those time frames, but getting them in anywhere is awesome. And then in terms of feedback, I think time sensitive sessions was one of the key things. So we've narrowed it down to, for strength work, activation to get you started and warmed up. Then strength and power is now combined into one circuit, let's call it, with 3 movements that you'll flow through. And then there's a bonus finisher that's kind of endurance specific, targeting some of those key areas if you have time for that. And then the race season mobility, lots of awesome feedback from the base season work. Doc Kyle has done an amazing job creating 2 new routines that are, I think, fantastic because they have just that perfect combination of stretching but also that kind of activation side of things that are going to really like get you sharp and ready for your next workouts, but also help you stay healthy and strong, recovering from some of those big workouts. So a really nice combo from the mobility side from Doc. And then Mark, I don't know if I can get the next slide or if you want to click it for me. Beautiful. Okay, so I kind of reviewed this, but activation, these are the 3 parts of your workout, and I'm just going to go over like what your mindset should be in these parts. So activation is going to be the first thing you do. This is the part of the workout that you're going to be doing a lot of work on that posterior chain, hamstrings, glutes, core, hips, back, trying to fix that any of those like muscle imbalances that we get from sitting on a bike for hours or running for hours. Lots of injury prevention work here, and then lots of glutes, hips, hamstrings, core, which is the powerhouse of all of our work. So we want to keep those areas really healthy and strong, because if they're strong, then our back stays healthy, our knees stay healthy, and our feet and ankles stay healthy. So that's kind of the key focus of activation. And then strength and power. So in the previous phases, we've done our power work and then we've done our strength work to follow. Now we're going to combine that into one. So a little bit less intensity on this work, but we still want to stay sharp in our race season build. So we don't want to lose that speed and power. Kind of the same reason we still sprinkle in that zone 5 work. This power work is kind of the same focus. So you're going to see some plyo work in here still, lots of unilateral strength work, which is single arm, single leg work to really work on that core strength and stability. And then the final part, race season mobility, talked about it a little bit, but Doc Kyle's done an awesome job. Key notes here, you'll see them in Training Peaks: reducing your risk of injury, improving your mechanics. So a lot of like neuromuscular kind of connection going on there in a lot of the movements, making sure everything's firing and working properly. And then the mobility work's really going to help you absorb your training, just getting that blood flow, circulation. The key with your mobility work is moving with intent and control, so not rushing through it, and taking your time with the exercises. Kind of do them as long as you need to do to feel better. And then, like all of our endurance training, consistency and time is the key to success. So the more frequency you can get on this mobility work, the better. Trying to force, an intense 20-minute mobility session is not the key. Trying to just get them in twice a week for the next 8 to 10 to 12 weeks, you'll see some huge progress over time. So those are the keys there. And then on the next slide, I'm just going to dig into just some of the key workouts, some of the example workouts. So for strength, like I talked about, activation should take you about 10 minutes. You can see there's a glute band lateral walk, a banded glute bridge, a glute bridge hamstring walkout, and then a standing hip flexor march. Reminder, all of this is now in Training Peaks, and every single exercise has a video demonstration. We will see some consistency week over week. So what I've done so far is the first 2 weeks will be the same, and then week 3 and 4 will be the same, because we want a little bit of repetitiveness so our body's not getting shocked with new movements each week. So we'll repeat the same work, so you can the focus of the previous phase was adding sets or adding weight or adding reps. But in this phase, we really want to just improve quality of movement and just get that repetition. And then strength and power, you can see that we have a kettlebell swing, which is going to be your power-based movement. Then we have a single leg Romanian deadlift, which is going to be for those hamstrings and glutes and really get that balance and stability. And then we have a heel elevated split squat iso hold, a tongue twister. That one is going to be great for your soleus and your calves and your hips, because you're going to be holding that isometric hold in the split squat position. So excited for that strength and power section. And then in the bonus work there, we got some skater jumps, which is a little plyo for us to stay a little bit explosive. And then we got some banded lat pull downs, make us strong in the pool. And then we got some pal off rotations, which is some great core work. So that's an example of a Monday routine. Friday routine, slightly different, but similar format. And then both of Doc Kyle's mobility routines have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 movements. If you take like 2 to 3 minutes for a movement, it's a 15 to 20-minute routine. And I just wanted to show you that all of his videos are on our YouTube channel, Limitless Performance. So you'll see them under the shorts. So everything is linked from Training Peaks, but if you want to just see them all in one spot, you'll be able to see them there. All of them have audio with them and the video demonstration. So excited for that combination. It's going to be keeping you guys healthy and strong during race season. And then just a couple things. Doc Kyle has treatments on Tuesday nights at this time, but he has a few notes in the next slide. This is an intense time of year, so better to sit out one day than to sit out 5 weeks. If you try to push through pain and you make a little niggle into something much bigger, you can be sidelined for a long period of time. So addressing it, taking a rest day, treating it, and then getting back to work will keep you in the game. And then training through injury at 50% is also not productive. So pushing through and grinding through when things aren't feeling great is not going to set you up for success long term. So figuring out what's going on and then getting back to work at 80, 90, 100% is going to be much more successful. And then some of the things to consider, questions to ask if you're dealing with some aches and pains and niggles or a potential injury. Is this a new issue or is it something that's reoccurring? As I'm training, is it improving or is it worsening or is it staying the same? And then, what stage of my season am I in? Do I have a race coming up and it's worth it to risk it a little bit and push through? Or, am I really training for a race that's in 6 months and it's better to just get healthy and get back on track when I can? And then when in doubt, reach out to one of our coaches, either me or Mark or any of our group leaders or other coaches along with Doc Kyle. And we're all experienced in the game of strength and endurance, but we're also experienced in the game of injuries and aches and pains. So we can at least guide you in the right direction. And then last but not least, this is kind of Doc Kyle's rule around how to manage and understand kind of where you're at in your injury process or aches and pains process. So in the first 24 hours, rate where you're at in terms of 0 to 10, and then see what's happening. And then if the pain is still present in that 24 to 48 hour window, it's time to start using some at-home kind of measures. And then if you're at that 72-hour window, it's time to reach out. So waiting for 1 or 2 or 3 weeks dealing with aches and pains and getting worse is not going to set you up for success. So cool little way to think about how to manage it. And then for our local athletes, Doc Kyle is available at Limitless on Fridays. These are some of the methods he uses to help treat us. He also does an awesome job of providing like at-home homework for any of our athletes that come in. And then the other great option, and it seems kind of unique, but Kyle's an endurance athlete himself, as most of you know. So a quick consultation phone call to talk through what you're working through and for him to be able to send you some homework exercises and get you working on a rehab program is also something he can do and has done with athletes. So if you have someone that you know and trust and you're not local, use them. If you don't, reach out to Doc and he can at least guide you in the right direction and get you working on the right things. So that's it. Thanks, Coach. Pass it on to Kara.
All right. Hi, everyone. Can you hear me all right? Yeah? Okay, good. So I'm Kara. For those of you that don't know me, I'm a registered dietitian who specializes in working with endurance athletes, and I'm co-owner of Blueprint Nutrition. So hopefully you've seen my face in some of the webinars and things that are in the Facebook group. But I'm going to just chat a little bit about nutrition for this kind of base build season. And I think, a lot of this we've talked about before, but I just think it's really important to reinforce some of these things. And if you're kind of new to the endurance world, it's good to kind of like think about these things as you're building up your training. So as mileage increases, as the intensity of workouts increases, we really want to focus on supporting our workouts with our nutrition and our fueling. So that usually means increasing what we're eating, paying more attention to how we're fueling. And so I just kind of put a couple of bullet points here. But I kind of always talk about kind of the concept of like wrapping your workouts in good nutrition, right? So having a good pre-workout snack. I'll talk about intra-workout fueling a little bit more, and then post-workout fueling. And so if you're doing that, and as your workouts increase, and maybe you're doing more workouts in a week, then naturally your intake will go up because you're kind of like, doing the pre and post and intra workout fueling. You may also find that you get hungrier throughout the day, or you might find that you're not as hungry because exercise and more intense workouts can also suppress appetite. But that just means you have to be a little bit more intentional about how to add extra to your meals and snacks. And I just kind of put a note there about especially the day before, a long run, long ride, long workout. So that's for most people, that's going to be the Friday kind of going into the weekend. It's good to practice almost like a mini carb load, so that come race day, you know what to do for the carb load and you know that your body can tolerate it, but also it will help improve the quality of your weekend workouts. And so generally what I recommend in terms of carbohydrate intake for a carbohydrate load is about 8 to 10 grams of carbs per kilogram of body weight. So if you do the math on that and figure it out, and kind of just look at mapping that out, then you can kind of practice that the day. Usually like one day is kind of a good like mini carb load before the big weekend workouts. So practice is key with all of these things. And I love how Mark mentioned the morning workouts, because that is great opportunity to practice fueling before a morning workout, right? Because races are in the morning typically. So you want to make sure that you are practicing your race day plan and that is also fueling your workouts during training. I feel like there's a bit of a resurgence in the popularity of fasted workouts out there in the world, in the endurance world. And I just want to say that while, research shows there may be some benefit to that, I feel like there's a lot more benefit to doing your workouts well fueled. And when you're a like pro, triathlete, and that's, this is what you do for a living, then you can kind of play around a little bit more. When you're an athlete who's like working a full-time job, doing all the things and training a lot, the quality of your workouts is really important, right? And so we know that fueled workouts are going to be higher quality workouts, right? And so that's going to be really, really important. So I know it can be tempting to like see things on social media and be like, yeah, I want to do that, or I should try that. But I would suggest like looking at these things that we know are going to make a difference. So fueled workouts, fueling well, pre-intra post-workout fueling, those are the things that are going to make a significant difference. So that's kind of what I would focus on in terms of nutrition. Okay, go to the next slide, Mark. So I just want to talk a little bit about intra-workout nutrition and hydration, because as workouts get longer and training gets longer and more intense, this is what we want to focus on. And so I just kind of put the general guidelines there. For carbohydrate intake, I think Mark and the other coaches as well kind of put together a bit of a plan in your workouts in terms of suggestions for carb intake. So that's always helpful. But the goal is, generally about 60 to 90 grams per hour. If you can tolerate more, that's great. But like, I find most people are working up to 60 to 90 grams per hour. So that's the good initial goal. And then, you can increase from there if you think it's going to be beneficial. And for hydration, so the general guidelines are to consume about 400 to 800 mils of fluids per hour, but that varies a lot based on the person. It depends on if you're a heavy sweater or a lighter sweater. So that's kind of the range. And I would say the majority of athletes that I see in our practice are not having 400 to 800 mils of fluids per hour. So that is a great starting point. And then you can always kind of fine tune that with some sweat rate testing. And then sodium needs generally are about 300 to 600 milligrams per hour. And again, that may vary based on if you have a lot of sodium in your sweat, if you're a very salty sweater or not. So just, at this point, even if your race is 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months away, you do want to still be familiar, familiarize yourself with what are they offering on course? How am I going to think about how you're going to carry your nutrition, your fluids for race day? Because ideally you want to be practicing your race day nutrition throughout your training and making adjustments if it's not working. So even though it may feel like it's still a little ways off, if you're doing something later on in the summer, definitely you want to start practicing now because that's going to be really important. All right, next slide. Okay, I just wanted to talk about blood work. I know we chatted about this last time as well, but this is I feel like a lot of athletes miss this opportunity. It's kind of like low-hanging fruit where if your ferritin's low, that's a fairly easy thing to fix, right? But if you don't know that it's low, you're not going to be able to fix it. So if you haven't had blood work done in the last year, I would highly recommend going to your family doctor, asking for some blood work, especially ferritin, things like vitamin D. I'm seeing lots of low vitamin D levels right now because we're right at the end of the winter into the early spring. Things like B12, magnesium. These are things that can be very helpful for endurance athletes to check on a regular basis every year or every 6 months, just to make sure that everything is kind of where it should be. And if you want a list of recommended blood work, I do have a list or a little letter for doctors. If you don't really know what to ask for, I'm happy to send that to you and you can bring that into your family doctor. Okay, next slide. All right. So if you feel like you want more nutrition support, we have lots of different options. We provide one-on-one nutrition counseling. We have online programs. The link is in the LP Facebook group, but I can put it in there again because we have lots of options for different topics if you're interested in learning more about it. And I would also say, I know after we did the last monthly webinar, there were some questions that came up from athletes that they asked their coaches and the coaches passed along the questions, which is great. But we are happy that if you want to reach out to me directly, my email address is there. I am happy to answer questions by email or jump on a quick phone call if you're just you just have a couple of quick questions. We really are here to support you in your fueling needs and making sure that you're figuring that out. So even if you don't want to do nutrition counseling or you don't want to do anything in depth, that's fine, but we're happy to still answer questions. So just feel free to reach out and my email is there and our website is there as well. We are doing, I know in the past, some of you may have seen, we've done sweat testing. So we test sodium levels and sweat rate. We are doing another one in Guelph on May 3rd. So if you are interested in that, it basically just involves putting some patches on your arms. You do, usually it's a short run or bike for about 45 minutes. And then we extract the sweat from the patches and we analyze how much sodium is in your sweat and your sweat rate as well. So it can be very helpful, especially heading into summer races. It's a really helpful tool because then you can really develop a personalized hydration and electrolyte strategy. So especially if you're doing anything longer in terms of racing than 2-3 hours, it's really helpful to have that kind of personalized plan for hydration and sodium. So yeah, That's everything.
Awesome. Thank you so much for all you do for the club, Kara. Guys, that sweat and hydration testing is so important. I found out, and it made such a difference for me that I was like taking in too much sodium and not enough hydration. And once I like got those two fixed, holy, my like workouts got way better. I recovered way quicker and like, yeah, it makes such a huge difference. Way less GI issues, everything. So can't
Yes,
recommend it enough.
can be super helpful. Yeah, definitely.
Cool. All right, guys, we'll wrap it up there. I got a jet tonight, but you know where to find me as well. You can send me a message, mark@lpfit.ca, or message me on Facebook Messenger if you guys have any questions on it. But thanks for tuning in. If you're watching the recording, thanks for watching that as well. We'll catch you guys all soon, and good luck on your races if you're racing in the next couple weeks. I know a lot of people are, so go crush it, race smart out there, and we'll catch up with you soon. Cheers.